Welcome to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day with your hosts, David Towner and Sam McKeown. If this podcast does speak to you, please like, share, and comment. Let your friends know all about us. And now, here's your hosts, Dave and Sam. Well, we're back at Today is My Favorite Day. And if you're watching this, obviously, I'm not with David Towner today.
No.
I am with Alexus Rocha. She is our children's director here at the Harbor. She also has a business called Allan Boytique, which if you have a toddler, young child, you have to check out her stuff, matching outfits and things like that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, all for boys.
All for boys. So, boy, what are you going to do when you have a girl?
I know. I'm not sure if we're going to have any other children, but if we do and one's a girl, then I guess You'll have to change I'll have to add some girl clothes too.
There you go. Well, we're here to talk to Alexus today about a couple of different things. In our society today, we have a lot of single parent homes. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of foster care. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of organizations out there that help with foster care and that guide and direct folks through the system and through adoption processes. And the thing about Alexus is she's been through a lot of that.
I have.
So when did you first go into foster care?
I went into foster care at the age of 4.
Okay.
And I was taken by social services, so basically the state. And if you're not familiar with the system, there has to be a couple of adults reach out and basically say we have a concern, we're worried about this or that, some neglect or some abuse. They come in and investigate, and there usually has to be the investigation has to be corroborated, basically that they did find evidence of neglect or abuse, and there typically has to be a few cases of it. So they've given mom and or dad a few chances to do the right thing or to go to the right classes and have the right education to do the right thing, and they've failed at each of those attempts, at which the state decides, okay, it's for the safety of the children, let's go ahead and remove them.
And did you have brothers and sisters in the same situation?
I did. I had a younger sister. She was 8 months old at the time when we were taken, and I'm not sure where I was. I just know that I was 4. So we were both taken into the system together, but we were separated eventually.
And that is an issue with the system.
It is. And I think now, looking back as an adult, when I can kind of see all the sides of it, I think that they are doing their best to give each child their best chance. So sometimes, as a baby, your best chance at being adopted is alone. Mm-hmm. There are some parents who aren't willing to take on more than one child, especially if that child is considered, quote unquote, older, and they can come with some habits they've learned in these neglectful or abuseful homes.
Right. My parents did foster care for a lot of years.
Wow.
I can't remember the final number of foster kids they had through their homes. They were up in Wyoming, and they took usually abuse cases and temporary care and stuff like that. So the system, while not perfect,
right,
is necessary in many, many cases. So you were in foster care for how long?
For 3 years.
Okay. So from 4 to about 7 or so. And how did the adoption process come out of the foster care?
It was a little bit harder than I expected. I was also a child, so of course I don't know all the adult things that go on, but I kind of expected that I would meet the right family and they would say, oh, we love her and we want to keep her, and then that would be that. It took about a year. I wasn't adopted until I was 8. Okay. And even then I remember there being bumps in the road. I don't know specifically what they were, but just that we were intending to be adopted on this day, and it would get pushed back a few months because of something not being handled properly by whoever. So, but it took about a year. So
was it with the foster family, or was it a different family? How did that come about?
It was a foster family. So in my 3 years in foster care, I went through 13 different homes.
Wow.
Some of those were single families. Some of them were group homes. I was hospitalized for a little while. But so I went through 13 different homes, places physically.
Okay.
So the 13th was my adoptive family.
That was your lucky number.
That was my lucky number. It was. But they were great, and they had me for that year until I was adopted and I was theirs officially. So I know you were just a child, and looking back, and maybe your parents have told you something, was there a reason through that many foster care homes? Yes. Looking back, I
You were a problem child?
Yes.
Okay.
I absolutely was. I was a troublemaker. I was. And I absolutely know now that a lot of that was not my fault. That I carried a lot of guilt because, of course, every time I got moved, I thought, what did I do? What could I have done differently? How could I have been better? I promise I'll be better this time. But I had a lot of emotional and psychological issues that hadn't really been dealt with. Like, I may be seeing a counselor, but I wasn't really getting the help that I needed. I was diagnosed with ADHD and I was being medicated for that, but really for nothing else. So I endured a lot of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. And while I, again, maybe seeing a counselor and doing like play therapy because I was a child, I wasn't doing a lot of the deeper therapy that I needed. Right. So with that not being addressed, obviously your behavior is communication. So that's where I was seeking attention, was in my bad behavior.
We call it acting out, right?
Right, for sure, I was.
And I know my parents saw a lot of that through the years with foster care, and there's programs out there now, and I know, so you know, you're not that old, but a little bit older, and I'm sure the system has changed quite a bit, and there's more that we know about children who are suffering the abuse and things like that. And the concern is that they do get the right help.
Right.
And so much, I remember years ago, my sister struggled with addictions and she ran away from home. She did all this kind of stuff and they tried to put her in foster care. That was a joke, but that's a story for a whole nother time. But they didn't really have processes in place to play, you know, and for some kids, it's okay, but if you can't get to the deep root of things, then you don't ever grow. Yeah. So tell me about the adoption.
The adoption, as much of it as I remember, was pretty happy. It was a good thing. We were really excited. The parents that adopted me had been in the foster care system for about 8 years. Okay. They had fostered about 48 children.
Wow.
They had 4 adopted children at the time, and I was their 5th. And they had decided to be done. I was their lucky one. They were done after me.
Last one, huh?
I know. So it was a good time, and I think it was also good closure for them. So they have biological children as well. So we have a large family. Our whole family came. I just remember being a really good day. I've got a lot of good pictures. Okay. My biological sister also got to be there. She was adopted by another family, but they did bring her just to see me. And I think that was probably the first time I had seen her in a few years. So it was a big happy thing.
So how are the family dynamics now that you're older and?
They are complicated.
Yes, I would imagine.
As far as my biological sister, she and I do not really have contact. We did meet a couple more times as we got older. Like I think maybe 3 times from the time that I that first meet. But I haven't seen her since I was like 9. So it's been a long time. And she's like right at adulthood. She's probably in college now. But I also don't know what she knows. She was very young at the time. She was probably only 4 or 5. I don't know if she has any memory of me or meeting me. I don't know if she knows that she's adopted. So personally, I don't really feel like it's my place to go and wreck her life. If she finds out and was like to reach out to me one day, then I'll be happy to reconnect when she is. But I'm going to kind of leave the ball in her court. Okay.
That's kind of wise.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the adoptive family?
My adopted siblings and I are very, very close.
Okay.
All 5 of us are very, very close. I talk to all of them quite frequently. I have a brother getting married this year. We're really excited. Oh, cool. My sister and I got to have our babies at the same time. Our babies are 3 weeks apart, our first babies. We're just that last one is left. Almost all of us are married. I have one who works offshore, but we keep in contact via phone quite often. And most of them we're from Texas. Most of them still live in Texas.
Okay. So. What about your birth parents? Is there ever any contact there?
So I'm not aware of who my father is.
Okay.
And my biological mother, I don't really have contact with. I have recently allowed her to follow me on Facebook, social media, so that she can like see that I'm okay and I'm doing well and I have a happy and healthy life and a family. But we don't talk to each other.
Any triggers?
So we did try when I turned 18, I wanted to meet her. So I reached out. She had been remarried to a man and they had 2 children. And she did come down to Texas. She was living in like Nebraska.
Okay.
So she did come down to meet me, and I'll be honest, it didn't really feel authentic. So
Okay.
A lot of the things that she would say to me, she would talk about things that happened in my life while she wasn't part of it, which I don't really feel like she gets to have a whole lot of opinion about because she wasn't part of it.
She wasn't part of it, yeah.
So those things would kind of rub me the wrong way, or hurt my feelings. And then, she has 2 other daughters that, again, kind of hurts my feelings. She wasn't able to raise me, and these actually weren't even her children. They were from his previous marriage. And as much as at 18, as much of an adult as you are at 18, as much as I didn't want to resent these little girls, I did in my heart, because she was getting to be the mom to them that I never got to have from her. So it was just a big struggle for us, and I don't believe that she was sober.
Okay.
I wasn't sure at the time, but now, especially looking back, there were a lot of clues.
Yeah.
I don't believe that she was sober, so it did not work out. And after she went back home, I found out she went back to prison. So that's been a boundary for me. We have not had contact since.
Okay. So the whole emotional roller coaster that you can be on between adoption and being taken into foster care, meeting the birth parents and things like that.
Right.
A lot of folks don't understand that emotional roller coaster and how hard it is. And I'll bet. I mean, I have folks who have reached out to me that I have some friends who are in similar situations, and they say, well, why doesn't he just get a hold of his dad and talk it out? It's not that easy.
It's not. It's really not. And we have a program here that's talked about quite a lot called Celebrate Recovery. And quite often I have to listen to testimonies from adults who were very much in the situation that my mom was. And they have to talk about their addictions and how they were powerless to them. And as much as they didn't want to choose that over their child, they did make those choices. So I think that's been healing for me in a way, to have to get to hear her side of it, quote unquote, even though it's not coming from her, to kind of empathize as much as I can that she is powerless to that. But
it gives you
that complicated
empathy, but yes, it is complicated.
But it is complicated. The consequences were very real, and I'm a product of that.
Yes. You're doing fairly well.
Thank you. I try really hard.
Well, like I mentioned, Alexus runs our children's program here, and seems to be very well adjusted, and the kids love her and everything else, and so she's doing very well. Now, the next topic I want to talk about, which is a major life change even for kids, and that's divorce.
Yes. So I mentioned that I was adopted at the age of 8, and by the time that I was 12, my parents had separated. So I had a few really great years in there of a quote-unquote normal family, and we had 2 of my adopted siblings are biological. So they are brother and sister, and they have the same mom and dad. Social services reached out to my parents and told them that there was another set of them out there in the world, and they were also biological siblings. They had the same mom and dad as my 2 current siblings did, and asked if we would take them, because they do make every effort to keep siblings together if they are able to. Well, at this time, my parents are older. My parents have not only raised their biological children and put them in college before they started adopting. Right. So mine are at the age of typical grandparents. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So she's done. She's tired. She just does not. And these kids are very young. If I remember correctly, I think they were like 4 and 6. Very, very young kids. And they had been through a lot of neglect and abuse, and we're going to need a lot of professional help. So my mom said that we needed to decline as a family, and my dad did not agree. Oh. My dad didn't feel like he could give up on these kids. And looking back as an adult, I can very much see both sides. I think the problem was that they didn't make the choice together.
Right.
So my dad said yes. We did get these children. And if you've never adopted a child or taken a foster child in, as much as it is a blessing, it is chaos. Yeah. It's a whole nother person you're trying to fit into your family, and we were taking 2, and they both had just been through something very traumatic. The event that had them taken from their home, they had watched someone shoot someone else, so they had physically witnessed something very traumatic at a young age. And now they were also being uprooted and moved states away where they had no family, no nothing, no friends. They knew no one. So it was just, it's a whole lot for a very tiny person to try to wrap their head around. And I'm not sure what happened behind my parents' bedroom doors, but we came home from church one Sunday and my dad was moving with these two children to another place.
Oh, I see. That could be tough.
Very tough. Very.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 12.
12. Yeah.
And their divorce was finalized when I was 15. So that's a lot of kids. They had land, they had horses, they had a house, they had a lot of assets. So it was quite complicated.
Yeah, and it gets that way. And when you have two people who have been in a relationship for a while, they know each other's deep, dark secrets, and it gets nasty.
Yeah,
and
they had been married for over 20 years, so
yeah.
It was.
So did they have some sort of custody arrangement that?
They did. I know, honestly, I don't remember exactly what it was because I remember my mom, at least in the beginning, being pretty flexible because my dad was our primary provider. She had been a stay-at-home mom. So I remember her being pretty flexible at letting him have us or pick us up from school if that was more convenient and stuff. As the divorce went on, it did not go that way. It was a little more strict about it's not your weekend or it's not your night. I remember there being some fighting about that if he needed to switch days and she didn't want to be flexible. And then as we got older, I was the youngest. My sister actually decided she wanted to live with my dad. So she moved to my dad's house. And then shortly after, my brother decided he wanted to live with my dad. So he moved. And every time that would happen, you'd have to go back to court and redraw custody agreements. And I eventually did the same. So we probably made it a little bit longer as well.
Yeah. It's and when you have children involved like that, and you know, we all think when we're 15, 16 years old, we are on top of the world and we know what's best for us, right?
Right.
But you have the whole emotional gamut. Oh, I want to live with dad. Dad does these things and will take us and go places here, and mom will do this, and you know, at mom's we have to eat at 5 o'clock, and you know, dad will let us eat pizza in front of the TV, you know, and it's just different rules in different households, and it's in the counseling and coaching I've done through the years, it's never really about the Disneyland dad type thing for the most part. I mean, there are some situations where when one parent has a lot more money than the other, that does play in there. But I think in the long run, both parents generally want what's best for the child. But what is that if you're not still living with the spouse, you know? Right. So what kind of feelings does it leave you with today? How are you dealing with it today as an adult?
As an adult, it makes me very determined to make my marriage work.
Okay.
And my husband actually comes from a divorced home as well. Okay. So we, that was one of the very first things that we talked about. I'm pretty sure it was on like our second or third date. Okay. We both talked about that our parents were divorced and that was not what we wanted for our future family. So whatever it takes, whether we have to go to counseling for most years of our marriage, you know, whatever it is, if he needs to sleep downstairs or in the guest room, we're going to make it work.
I see.
So that's been I think that's been a really good positive from it is that he got to see a marriage that ended and I got to see a marriage that ended. And obviously we got to see bad things from both of those. So we know not to do those. Right. We know what to avoid.
And you have a tendency to then start looking for folks that you know that have good, solid marriages.
Right.
And you realize that they got trouble too.
Everyone does.
And you have to learn how to walk through it, how to talk through it, and how to
be a team.
Be a team together, exactly. And now you have Ray involved.
I do.
And we'll talk about him in our next session. But through it all, through the foster care and through the adoption, through the divorce and all of that, you seem to be fairly well adjusted. Or am I just seeing the surface?
Oh, I hope that I am. I really do. I try really hard. I do have, with all of the issues and emotional things that come with that, I definitely am a performer. I try really hard to live more and perform less. It's definitely there. I love that it looks like I have it all together. I absolutely don't. But I do think that I'm doing a lot of the work. I'm doing a lot of the finding the root issues and really grieving the parts of my life that I didn't get to have, the normal, quote unquote, normal childhood that I missed out on, and even adolescenthood that I missed out on because of those things. So I hope I can be well adjusted for my child.
And one of the things that as we go forward here is you dig deep.
Right.
And you figure out where all those emotions come from, what caused them, and then you move forward. And you're doing Celebrate Recovery. I'm in Celebrate Recovery. Our whole church, it seems like, is in Celebrate Recovery.
Just about.
And I would recommend that if you are in an area and you have issues like this, or you've been through things like the foster system or through adoption, or you have issues in your past that you need to deal with, find a Celebrate for Recovery. It is a Christ-centered 12-step program that is just phenomenal. I've been through other 12-step programs, but the Celebrate Recovery is absolute best. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Alexus. We're going to come back. Our next session, we're going to talk about some more things and some fun things. Yeah. But thank you for being our guest today on Today is My Favorite Day. What is the thing today that makes today, right now, your favorite day?
I get to pick a new playground for our preschoolers, and I am really excited. So today's my favorite day.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for watching. This has been Sam McKeown with Alexus Rocha. Today is my favorite day. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day. The views, comments, and opinions expressed here today are those of the hosts and guests alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day, is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Bach. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed, my friends.